are listening to the Absolute Arsenal podcast. My name is PJ Davidson, and I'm your host. You can find me on both Twitter and Instagram at AbsoluteAFC. That's Absolute AFC. Never thought this moment would be here after a 10-year hiatus from the blog, but we are back. And what a year to ever bring the blog back and add a podcast. It's it's been 10 years since I started this blog in college. A lot has happened since then. Got married, had a kid. But if there was ever a year to bring the podcast back, or bring the blog back and start a podcast, I think it's fair to say that this would be the one. The team's doing incredible, sitting in first place, 5 points clear of Manchester City at the time of recording. It's great. But purpose of this episode is just to give a quick introduction as to who I am, what the blog is, what the podcast will be, and what to expect moving forward. So again, my name's PJ Davidson. I'm 32 years old, grew up in Chicago, Illinois, and found a love for Arsenal when I was about 7 years old. It was the summer of 1998, and we were in the lead up to the 98 World Cup. Had a good friend that was Brazilian. I would spend a lot of time at his house after school, summers, and everything else, playing Nintendo 64, particularly FIFA Road to the World Cup 1998. Phenomenal video game for anybody here who ever got a chance to play it. A little bit different than what the current FIFA looks like. So for those who remember France 1998, it was pretty blatant that there was the heavyweight. That was Brazil. And being at a friend, and ultimately a friend who lives in a Brazilian household for all facts and purposes, that meant that every single time we played, he was going to be Brazil. And this was Brazil where the OG Ronaldo Nazario, was on top of the world. So much talent around him, Roberto Carlos, Rivaldo, I mean, you name it. It was a heck of a team. And the only real chance that I had whenever I would try to go against him was to play as the other best team, which was France. They were a heavily Arsenal-influenced team, as I now know. Back then, had no idea, knew nothing. Soccer was not cool in America at the time as an American. And really, I mean, the France team was just awesome. And I frequently scored goals with some guy named Henry. No idea who he was. Little research later, found out his name wasn't Henry, it was Henry. His name was Thierry Henry. He played for a club called Arsenal. Their crest was cool. It had a cannon. That was pretty badass. And really the rest was history. I'm not going to sit here and say that at that age I watched every single game with intensive fervor and whatnot. Again, like, soccer was not really on TV in the U.S. I mean, I'm sure there were pay-per-view packages where you could try and get channels from outside the U.S., but for me, that was not going to happen. For me, the chance to really watch Arsenal started basically right after the Invincibles. So I don't have a great recollection of that team in that era, but around the time that I was 14, 15, just starting high school, there were channels here that started to show. There was Fox Soccer Channel, some places could get Setanta Sports, who had games at the time, and there was a little pub in Chicago, I'm sure it's still there, called Fido, and myself and a couple other friends thought it was kind of hipster of us to be into soccer, and one was a Liverpool fan, the other was a mix of Chelsea and Portsmouth. Portsmouth were pretty good at the time, and Fido would let the three of us in on Saturday and Sunday mornings. Obviously, we couldn't drink, nor did we try to pretend that we could drink, but we promised to sit in a table in the corner and be quiet and keep ordering food and drinks, and they were fine with it. We didn't cause any issues. And most of my Saturday and Sunday mornings throughout high school were spent at Fido. But I considered it a huge part of my education into the beautiful game. Fast forward to a senior year of college, I was trying to figure out what to do with my life. Watched Arsenal religiously, mostly on illegal streams on my computer where, you never knew what language you were going to get it in. The frame maybe changed once every minute or so. So you'd see if the score changed, what part of the pitch the ball was on. Again, just we're still nowhere near what the game looks like in America today in the coverage and certainly the money into Premier League and in football as a whole. But I needed to just start adding some things to my resume. I'm trying to apply to jobs. What can I do to make myself different? I was interning for a sports drink, startup sports drink essentially, and got connected with a local sports writer who's actually pretty big now. His name's Nick Friedel. He's covered the Bulls, he's covered the Warriors. I mean, he's a big personality. But ran into him. I guess he was a friend of the company in some way, and he encouraged me to start a blog about something I was passionate about. And Absolute Arsenal was born. This was the summer of 2012. So yeah, started doing this blog and found a passion for it. It was a lot of fun, but ultimately got into the professional world upon graduation, working in sales, working in baseball for the New York Yankees, and just had absolutely no free time. And one of the first things to go by the wayside was the blog. So it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it, but there was just no time for it. Fast forward one more time, now we're in, towards the end of 2022. I'm now married. I now have a young daughter. And what's really cool is I left baseball behind and actually now work in soccer and football. Starting to start the first professional soccer club in Queens, New York. It's called Queensboro FC. If anybody knows anything about Queens, New York, it's one of the 5 boroughs of New York City. It is actually the single most diverse place in the world. You've got over 200 nationalities represented, speaking over 130 languages. So it is just a soccer madhouse. Whenever it comes to international tournaments, a lot of the viral videos you see are different crazy celebrations coming from Queens, New York, which is really, really special to be a part of. But now working in the game, in Arsenal doing what they're doing, I figured, listen, there's no better time to jump back into Absolute Arsenal, do something I'm passionate about, and that's why we're here. So for anybody who's already following, there's been a daily blog about a week into this. So we're getting there. But what you can expect from me and from Absolute Arsenal is a daily blog all about the latest what's going on. Keep in mind, I am living in New York City, so the timing will be a little bit different than some of your other blogs. I've been a religious reader, listener of Arsblog and the Arscast and the Arscast Extra, and listen to the Arsenal Vision podcast and read Will Grove, a number of these, George Bird's Arsenal Youth. So something that you can look for that might be a little bit different is the timing. So I would expect, given that I am in New York, it will come out a bit later. So perhaps I'll have some news and some updates comprehensively in the blog that some of these others might not quite have, just because things have happened in the 5 or 6 hours since they're publishing. But you can look to me to publish in the early to, sometime in the morning before noon when it comes to the blog. And then I'm figuring out the podcast as we go. This is the first episode. This is the first time I've ever recorded a podcast. Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing, but we're going to figure it out. I think that's where we're going to see some magic. But my goal is to do, again, at least one podcast a week, covering what's going on in the world of Arsenal, going over matches that have recently happened, previewing matches that are upcoming. I'm excited to have a number of guests from different walks of life and backgrounds who are Arsenal fans. Hopefully, we can get some fans of other teams who we're playing. So whenever we take on, say, Liverpool, I'll have a Liverpool guest or two on so we can talk about that and get a perspective from their side of how they're feeling ahead of the match, what's going on in their club that, kind of the peripheral onlooker, as us Arsenal fans might not know, but the diehard true Liverpool supporter, or whatever club you want to call it, will have a little bit more perspective on things that we might not notice. So we're going to kind of make this up as we go along and figure it out. Super open to any and all feedback. Really, really welcome it. So please, again, Absolute AFC on Twitter, on Instagram. You can also email at absoluteafc@gmail.com. But I'd love feedback. I'd love comments, really anything and everything. this is really for all of you, and I hope it's something that you can enjoy. And biggest compliment I can get is a referral. Showing this blog, showing this podcast to friends, family, people who love the beautiful game, who love Arsenal, because that's what this is for everybody to come together over our love of this club. It's really cool living in America, growing up in Chicago, now living in New York City, and having friends from all over the world and walks of life to just talk about Arsenal. And, hopefully we'll make it to some of the local pubs here. I like to go to O'Hanlon's, which is the local New York City Arsenal bar. But yeah, really just, as I said, open to see where this goes. And I think that's really all I have for today. This will basically be your intro episode as to who I am, what Absolute Arsenal is, and I'm sure we'll look back on this in months and hopefully years and kind of laugh about where the heck this was now, and hopefully it's in a really cool place, and we've got readers and listeners from all over the world, and this will be a heck of an experience. So again, my name is PJ Davidson. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at AbsoluteAFC. Email us at absoluteafc@gmail.com. And I have, in fact, made a Facebook page for those who still use Facebook. So I'll look to post on there, but we'll certainly be most active on Twitter and Instagram. So that's what you got for today, and look forward to speaking soon. Cheers.